How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about the movie The Rental. It is directed by Dave Franco and stars Dan Stevens, Alison Brie, Julia Vand, and Jeremy Allen White. This movie is from 2020. Yes, a 2020 movie. Very rare considering all the craziness that's been happening around us lately. My dad actually found that this movie was playing in a theater a little bit from our house, but not too terribly far, more of a smaller, independent type theater. And I looked up the trailers and some reviews, and it looked okay. Normally I wouldn't be so excited for something like this, but the fact is, me and my dad, we were both itching to watch a new movie, and this was finally our chance, and we just ran out and watched it. Now, the theater, when we got there, they were following all the proper procedures. They made sure everyone had their mask on, and we actually had to wait outside, and a lady came with a little temperature gun and checked us to make sure we weren't too hot, weren't running a fever or anything. So I really do want to applaud this theater for following all the proper safety protocols and keeping everyone good. So that's great. That being said, let's just jump right into the movie. This movie, you get this guy, and he is going to rent a rental cabin with 3 of his friends. These people are his girlfriend, his brother, and his brother's girlfriend, and fun fact, the brother is actually dating his business partner. So they have a business victory, something goes well for their business, and they decide to celebrate with a vacation. They get a rental cabin, and they're going to take some time, rest, relax, and enjoy life. There is a little bit of tension right off the bat, though. The female business partner tries to rent the cabin first, and her application was denied. They don't let her rent it. But less than an hour later, one of the guys, I forget if it's him or the brother, tries to rent the cabin, and they approve him. So they begin to think, did they just reject her because she's Middle Eastern, like her name clearly gives that away on the application, and they begin to think maybe she was rejected because the renter is a racist, and yeah, that sets up some tension right off the bat. They still rent the cabin out, though. They go down there, and they begin to party as they had planned, and after a bit of partying, the lady discovers a hidden camera in the cabin and realizes that they're being watched. Now, this upsets them, but why don't they immediately report it to the police? Well, let's just say these people have been up to a few shenanigans, and it's not that simple. I can't really describe it more without spoiling it, which I don't want to do. I guess we'll get into the pros and cons. And to say it right off the bat, I thought this movie was alright. It's not great, it's not terrible either, but I know that some people have really latched onto this movie. Some people really love it, and if you do, that's good for you, that's fine. You know, I'm not really criticizing that, but this movie has some definite flaws that we're going to cover. But first, the pros. This movie has really good direction and really good cinematography. All the technical aspects, this looks really good. The shots are well composed, and it's a good looking movie. It shows good direction, and Dave Franco will probably go on to direct more movies, and they'll probably be good. And of course, the acting, when you do a movie like this, which is going to rely on a lot of emotion and drama, the acting has to sell it, and the acting here does. So, from a technical standpoint, it's really well put together. The problem is kind of the story and its direction and a few plot elements that are off. I guess to get into the biggest gripe is the first part of the story really asks us to hate this guy that's renting out the cabin to them. Technically it's this guy and his brother, but you only ever see the one guy, and the brother's really more the one that owns it. But it really asks you to hate this guy, because of the presumed racism from the beginning. But the amount they ask you to hate him, they really should have done more to confirm this. It's primarily the fact that the Middle Eastern lady wasn't allowed to rent the cabin, and she assumes it's because of racism. But me personally, I've done some work in online rentals in the past, and I know an application could be denied for a million reasons. The guy, when they confront him about it, says he simply never got her application in, which means that the computer probably auto-rejected it. It could be something really simple, like say the middle initial was a required field and she didn't fill it out, so it auto-rejected. I don't know. It could be a number of different things. But if he never got the email, it probably means the application was filled out incorrectly, and in turn the computer auto-denied it. But the story asks us to assume it was his racism, and sure, they do get into a little bit of a spat later on, but the story never outright confirms it. And if you want us to really hate this guy, just have a scene where he's alone and he says something to himself and the audience knows that this is 100% the case, because it doesn't really take this element far enough to, because it's left unclear. But that being said, the next element is the characters. The characters can really make or break a story, and there's a lot of, throughout the middle of the story, a lot of backstabbing, and it gets to be kind of one of those tangled web stories, and that really does drive the emotion, and it really gives the middle of the story something to do, and it is really interesting. However, unfortunately, the characters, they all are kind of hypocrites, and they never really notice, and the story is asking you to be on their side, and it's really weird. They'll find, the characters find that their rental cabin has a locked door, which in rentals is very common. It's usually just full of cleaning supplies, like a vacuum cleaner, or stuff that they don't want the guests to touch, and they get so upset by this locked door, even though it's literally everywhere. All real-world rentals have it. They get upset by that. Meanwhile, they're doing things like sneaking in a pet, which is blatantly against the rules, and, much worse than that, doing ecstasy on their property. And of course, later in the movie, they'll do even worse things, but they're very quick to judge this guy, and they don't realize all the stuff that they do. Now, this could really be used correctly to make the story really interesting, but I don't feel that it was. You get things like, say, Larry Cohen films, which play with flawed characters a lot, or say the comedy Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where all the characters are bad people. You can make bad people work, but you really have to acknowledge it in the script. And these are, especially towards the end, kind of backstabbing people, but it always seems like, from the story's perspective, that they're good guys, and it never really seems to acknowledge it right. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But the third element is the horror. Now, you get this camera concept, and that's been done in quite a few movies. Vacancy, 13 Cameras. It's not entirely new, and they don't really use it too much. It sparks the drama, but it's not until towards the end of the film that you see how many cameras there are, and you get the feeling that they're being watched. They don't do that except for at the very end for just like one scene where you see all the cameras. It sparks the plot, but they don't play off it enough, and it kind of, could have been a lot better. It could have really amped up the spookiness and would actually have been cheaper to film, so I don't know why they didn't put more of it through the perspective of these cameras. It's mainly drama between these characters and their relationships, and it doesn't become a horror movie till the very end, the third act, and then there is a pretty good slasher sequence where they're being chased around and they have to survive, but it is pretty short, and you do get some disappointing deaths. In particular, the first one to die, a main character, it cuts away before the death and then it cuts to after. It feels like one of those PG-13 edits where, there's a cool, gory death, but they're like, cut it out, keep it PG-13. And this movie isn't PG-13, but it feels like it in that one scene. But also, this sequence ends super abruptly to the point where you see the ending and you're like, oh, don't tell me that's the ending. Is it going to just cut it off right there? And yeah, it just ends way too quick. And it's to the point where I wonder, did they really want to make a horror movie? A lot of people have said that this movie could have worked without the horror element, and they could have made it more of a thriller, a more psychological thriller, and I think maybe that's what they wanted to do. I think maybe they wanted to make a thriller. They didn't really have as much interest in horror, but horror sells, and it's better marketing. So I think they just did that to make it more popular, and I don't think they had any real interest in horror. But that being said, it's a cool concept. It's done a lot. The whole hidden camera thing is done a fair bit. This does it better than a lot, and it's competently made. It's well crafted. It's just there's some story problems, and it's not that, not that great. It's fine though. Considering there's not much else out, if you want to go see a movie, you can see this, and if the video on demand is cheap enough and you really want to watch something new, it's fine, and maybe you'll be one of the people that really relates to it, because I know some people really like this movie. I thought it was okay. That being said, I do about 95% horror on this channel, so if you want to see more reviews for horror movies, stick around. To everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching, and to everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You are really helping out the channel. I'll see you guys again very, very soon, and have a good day.